our nation's position in the world vis-a-vis competitiveness. And I think we need a national competitiveness plan in America that would link together education reform, that would link healthcare reform. And by the way, healthcare debate in this country is not only a moral issue of 50 million Americans without health insurance, which I think is an abomination in the wealthiest country in the world when we have allowed that to happen, but it also is an economically competitiveness standpoint. We add, American business adds usually, particularly if you're in a manufacturing business, $3,000 to $5,000 more per employee in costs than any of our competitors in the rest of the world because of our additional healthcare costs and inefficient systems. So linking education reform, healthcare reform, intellectual capital creation, all together in a national competitiveness plan, something I'd, again, like to talk a little bit more about. A second area I'd love to talk about, but I'm not hearing any of our candidates, for that matter, candidates on either political party talk about, at least at the national level at this point, is we're going to need a fresh debate about our disinvestment over the last 35 years in infrastructure. Not a real you know, as a percent of our GDP, we've had almost a 50% decline in infrastructure investment since the 1970s. Nobody wants to talk about it. Instead, and then when they do try to talk about it, they, we see these kind of half-baked solutions on trying to fix our transportation problem. $3,000 speeding tickets isn't going to fix our transportation. But, we've seen it in our decaying roads. We've seen it in the fact that America no longer has a first world. Matter of fact, we probably have a third world rail system in this country. We see it in the fact that America's fallen to 15th in the world in broadband deployment. We talk about a way to wipe off opportunity in rural America, don't provide broadband deployment. Yet we need, I think we've got to restore Americans' faith that if we're going to invest in infrastructure, it's not going to be a series of pork barrel projects and bridges to nowhere, but the same kind of national focused infrastructure projects and program, the way President Eisenhower laid out when we created the interstate system back in the 1950s. We need a debate about that issue. A third issue that I want to emphasize, and some of you may have seen in the paper this morning, I talked about it some yesterday, it's an issue that I think has the potential to galvanize us in unprecedented ways and to really bring this country together in a truly unique way, and that's the issue of energy. I think energy could be one of the defining issues of the next decade plus for our country and for the world. And I say this really on a fourfold reason. First of all, I think our current energy policies could be summed up in this country as, let's go borrow money from China so we can buy oil from countries around the world that don't like us. And we may even be, and I say this with all respect, particularly for the enormous sacrifice that our troops are making in Iraq and Afghanistan, and taking the struggle against those who want to attack our way of life. But we may be the only country in the modern world that's actually funding both sides of a war, where we fund our troops to fight the terrorists, yet part of the $250 billion that we send abroad to buy oil from regimes across the world who are almost uniformly against us, some of those dollars that didn't go into the Middle East, I believe end up in the hands of terrorists.
Right.
And if you look at what's happening in Russia right now, a re-emerged Russia, with President Putin being more and more anti-American. How's he able to do that? Because he's sitting on resources that we in Western Europe are sending him for his energy reserves, his oil reserves. You look at what Mr. Chavez has done in Venezuela. He's done more to foment anti-Americanism in Latin America than Castro was able to do in the last 35 years, again, because he's being fueled by our money in terms of our purchases of foreign oil. Enormous security concerns around our energy policies. $250 billion I cite in terms of what we spend abroad to buy that oil, and that doesn't even cost the tens of billions of additional dollars our military spends on keeping those oil routes open. Enormous security. Second issue around our current energy policies are we contribute about 25% of the overall emissions of greenhouse gases. I believe the threat of climate change and global warming is real. I know there may be some in this room who are starting to say, oh gosh, thought Warner was not a traditional Democrat. He's starting to sound like Al Gore. But if you question the issue around global warming, okay, let's not listen to Al Gore. Listen to Arnold Schwarzenegger. I think he made perhaps a better way to sum up the question around global warming in some of the scientific debate. He said, if you've got a kid that's sick, and you go to see 100 doctors, and 98 of those doctors say, your kid's really sick, and he needs an operation. And 2 of the doctors say, well, this is just a passing phase, don't worry about it. I don't know about you as a parent, but me as a parent, I'm going to listen to the 98 doctors and get my kid that operation. Well, that's the ratio right now of the scientific community in terms of saying in excess of 95, 98% of the scientific community says the threat of climate change and global warming is real. Yes, there are a few outliers, but I believe we need to go with the preponderance of scientific evidence and what this issue means to our country and to the rest of the world. So there are enormous environmental concerns around our energy policy. The third area around energy that needs examination is this is an issue where the rest of the world is waiting for America to step up. I think all of us, regardless of our party affiliations, probably feel that we've seen America's stature in the world decline over the last 5 or 6 years for a whole host of reasons. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to reestablish that, not only economic leadership and military leadership, but moral leadership. The rest of the world is waiting for us to step up on this. Think for a moment if we could create the technology that would, for example, allow us to burn coal cleanly and capture the carbon, sequester it. What that would do not only in terms of America's prestige, but think about the leverage that would give us with China that's putting on a dirty coal plant, a dirty new coal plant every week. Enormous opportunities for us to restore our stature. And the fourth reason, this comes down to basic, good old American capitalism. If you ever talked about an opportunity where there's going to be jobs and value created, it's going to be around the creation of alternative energy and new energy sources. You know, I've made a pretty good living over the last 25 years from telecommunications and information technology. I'll spare you my cell phone joke this morning. I've ever come to Harrisonburg and not told that joke. Some of you haven't heard it yet? No, I was the co-founder of Nextel. I'm the guy that says leave your cell phones on even when I'm talking.